Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the budget process. Government accounting is primarily budgetary accounting. It does not only aim to provide information on past events and transactions, but also budget information in accordance with PPSAS 24. The Philippine Constitution and other laws require government funds to be utilized in accordance with a national budget that is duly approved by legislation. The national budget, which is also known as the government budget, is the government's estimate of the sources and uses of government funds within a fiscal year. This forms the basis for expenditure and is the government's key instrument for promoting its socio-economic objectives. The formulation and eventual utilization of the national budget are summarized in the budget cycle. The budget cycle is composed of four different phases. So we have budget preparation, budget legislation, budget execution, and lastly, budget accountability. The budget preparation in the Philippines uses a bottom-up approach. Under this type of budgeting, several agencies participate in the budget preparation, starting from the lowest to the highest levels of government. Philippine government also employs zero-based budgeting since 2011. Under the system, the current year's budget is formulated without regard to the previous year's budget. The budget preparation starts when the DBM issues a budget call to all government agencies. The budget call contains, among other things, the next fiscal year's targets, the agency's budget ceiling, and other guidelines in the completion and submission of agency budget proposals. Next, budget hearings are conducted after the agencies submit their budget proposals. Each agency defends its budget proposal before the Department of Budget and Management. The Department of Budget and Management deliberates and make recommendations and also consolidates the deliberated proposals into the National Expenditure Program or NEP and the Budget Expenditures and Sources of Financing or BESF. The DBM then submits the proposed budget to the President. The President and Cabinet members review the proposed budget. After the President approves the proposed budget, the Department of Budget and Management finalizes the budget documents to be submitted to the Congress. At this point, the proposed budget is referred to as the President's budget. Government funds shall only be spent in pursuance of an appropriation made by law. Therefore, due process must be undertaken to legalize the proposed budget. Upon receipt of the President's budget, the House of Representatives conducts hearings to scrutinize the various agencies' respective proposed programs and expenditures. Thereafter, the House of Representatives prepares the General Appropriations Bill or GAB. The Senate conducts its own deliberations on the GAB. These normally start after the Senate receives the GAB or GAB from the House of Representatives. However, for expediency, hearings in the Senate start even as representatives' deliberations are ongoing. After deliberations in both houses are finished, a committee called the Bicameral Conference Committee is formed to harmonize any conflicts between the representatives and Senate versions of the GAB. The harmonized GAB, the BICAM version, is submitted back to both houses for ratification. After ratification on the final GAB, After ratification, the final GAB or GAB is submitted to the President for enactment. The President enacts the budget, which is now known as the General Appropriations Act or GAA. Before enactment though, the President may exercise his veto power as conferred to him under the Constitution. Next, budget execution. This is the phase where the government funds are spent. The DBM, or Department of Budget and Management, issues guidelines on the release and utilization of funds while the various agencies submit their budget execution documents. A bid summarizes an agency's fiscal year plans and performance targets. Then the DBM formulates the Allotment Release Program or ARP to set the limit for allotment releases during the upcoming year. This is used as a control device to ensure that releases conform to the national budget. Alongside is a Cash Release Program or CRP, which sets the disbursement limits for the year, for each quarter, and for each month. Just a side note, allotment is an authorization issued by the DBM to government agencies to incur obligations for specified amounts contained in a legislative appropriation in the form of budget release documents. This is also referred to as obligational authority. After releasing of the allotment, the agencies may now incur obligations. And these obligations, of course, will be paid by the government. Examples are entering into contracts, hiring of personnel, purchase of supplies, etc. After incurring obligations, the DBM issues disbursement authority to the government agencies. This is the point where government agencies obtain access to the government funds. The following are the relevant terminologies that you have to memorize, distinguish, and consider. First, we have the appropriation. Appropriation is the authorization by a legislative body to allocate funds for specified purposes. Then the allotment. Allotment is the authorization to agencies to incur obligations. And this is also known as the obligational authority. Then we have obligation. Obligation is the amount contracted by an authorized officer for which the government is held liable. And lastly, disbursement. Disbursement pertains to the actual amount paid out of the budgeted amount. The last phase is the budget accountability. To make sure that funds are utilized efficiently and effectively and within the approved budget, government agencies are required to submit budget accountability reports to other relevant agencies charged with monitoring and audit such as the DBM and COA. Furthermore, the DBM and COA perform periodic reviews of the agency's performance and budget accountability and report the same to the President.